but that's okay. Some of you may have found my discussion on summary a tad bit boring, but it's just a review I really needed us to go through. So with that being said, I'll pause there. We'll come back to summary. But we've only talked briefly about essay writing. But you guys have noticed that when we read, I do encourage you guys to approach the reading as though you are reading an essay. So look at your opening paragraph and your concluding paragraph to hold background information, especially the intro, background information, to outline or lay out the author's main idea. And you would want to look to conclusion for that summary or reiteration. So we've talked about the format and structure of an essay. So I want to kind of pick up with that really quickly. From our discussions in class, what do you guys remember about essay format? So I just talked about intro. So that was a freebie, right? But we know that no matter if you're writing a 3-paragraph essay or a 20-paragraph essay, every essay includes an introduction, okay? So we're going to learn a little bit more about that today. But what else? What are the other parts of essay structure or essay format? What do you guys remember?
5 to 7 lines per paragraph.
Okay, so we talked about paragraphs, and I'll put this here. And that was Aisha. So paragraphs, yeah, so what you outlined, Aisha, was our discussion about when you guys are asked to write paragraphs, so we can have a working knowledge about how many sentences goes into that. So we know about 5 to 7, but where it relates to essay writing, right? What is the significance of paragraphs in our essay writing?
The body.
It's the body. Good, Rabia. So body paragraphs. And what does the body do?
It's like the details, basically combining
Good.
what your intro talked about, but more explained.
Exactly. Good. So we know if we look at the structure of an essay, intro introduces topic, introduces main idea, gives you any kind of background information that you'll need as reader or audience to follow it. Body paragraphs job, now that we've laid out topic and author's main point or main idea, the job of the body paragraphs is to now explain it to the audience in detail. So now I've kind of given you my point. Now here's me going into detail to support, develop, or prove that point, okay? So good, body paragraphs is where we normally go into further detail, explanation, evidence, statistics, research. All of that information goes into our ability to support that main idea. So that's our body paragraphs. Good. What else do we know in terms of essay format and structure?
Conclusion.
In conclusion. And I've kind of already been hitting you guys over the head with conclusion, but what do we know is the main job of the conclusion?
The summary of the body and reintroducing the introduction.
Good. So here's one thing that I need us, as we're kind of moving from reading to writing, to keep in mind. Well, from our first week survey, we agreed that normally good readers are good writers, right? We've learned that the two are dependent on each other. And when you, as a good reader, are aware of the parts of a text, when you, as a good reader, are aware that when I preview a text and I take a look at that introduction paragraph, when you're aware of the information you can get out of that intro paragraph, right? You know, topic information, background, maybe history, maybe context that'll help me understand it. When you're aware of those parts, as a reader, you read with that awareness. So you know in your opening few paragraphs, you're getting that background information. You know you're getting a setup for the author's main point. When you know that those body paragraphs are laying out details and not main points, but it's laying out examples or explanations. When you know as a reader that as you get to the bottom of your text, as we get to the conclusion, you know that this is where the author would normally review and reiterate those main points. You're more able as a writer to mirror that. So I want us to be mindful of the essay structure and format, because as readers, it will help us get the most from our reading, but it'll also help us inform us as to what we need to plug in when we write our own essays. And what I found out from you guys, whether it was from your diagnostic or just from surveys, that we all want to be stronger readers and writers. And a very large part of that lies with our ability to understand structure and format of the text that we're reading. So that's what I want us to cover very shortly. I have a quick YouTube video. If you guys haven't taken any notes on this, please make sure you're doing so, especially with the video, because you guys will see this information again. It'll show up either in some kind of survey or quiz, but to know the parts or the format and structure of an academic essay is a really important staple of the class. So let me pause for just a second. Let me pull up this video and share it with you guys. It's going to reiterate a lot of what we just talked about, but hopefully it makes it a tad bit clearer. Give me 1 second. Now, primarily, unless you are reading fiction or a particular, let's say, type of text, maybe satire, unless you're reading a particular type of text, most newspaper articles, most essays, most speeches, they all follow the same essay format. So let's talk about that. All right. So this video is called Basic Essay Structure. It's really short. It's like I think three minutes. So sometimes I pause it to jump in, but again, if you guys don't normally take notes, definitely make some attempt to be aware of and identify the working parts of an essay. So it's what we call basic essay structure. All right, let me share my screen. All right.
Understand basic essay structure. Before you write it,
I'm pausing. Is this low, you guys? Can we hear this okay?
It's kind of low.
Okay, let me turn it up. All right.
Before you write an essay, it's important to understand basic essay structure. Now, every essay has the same core structure regardless of the kind of essay you're writing. Now, an opinion essay, comparison contrast essay, or narrative essay will all have slight differences, but the basic structure will always be the same. It will consist of three main parts. You have your introduction, body, and conclusion. The introduction and conclusion will each be one paragraph, and the body can be any number of paragraphs, depending on the length of the essay you're writing.
All right, I'm pausing here just for a quick second. He stated that the introduction and conclusion are generally one paragraph. For conclusion, I can say that this is primarily the case. For introduction, however, we have read text. You guys even saw with the Jason Oda. We've read text where we've seen maybe 2 or 3 paragraph introductions. So again, it's really important to be more aware of what that paragraph is doing rather than how many it is. So with intro, in articles, a lot of times the intro is normally that first 2 or 3 paragraphs. So just be mindful of that, you guys. But for basic essay structure, where you guys will be asked to write your own essays, know that an introduction, academic introduction, is 1 paragraph.
Now, the introductory paragraph can be split into 3 parts. The first part is what we call the hook. And all that means is the first sentence of your essay should engage the reader, grab their attention, and introduce the subject in an interesting way. Students often think that the best way to do this is to ask a question at the beginning of an essay, but that's overused, and I recommend that you do something else instead. I would highly recommend a strong statement or a surprising fact.
Okay, pausing again right here, where he's talking about the introduction in 3 parts, right? Are we familiar with hook? Have we learned about the idea or purpose of a hook in our introduction?
Yes.
Yeah. So for some of us, that's familiar language. Good. Okay, I'm glad. All right. The hook is normally, just how it sounds. Before you lose a reader, you work first to kind of engage them, to hook them, to kind of get them on the hook so that they will continue reading or even care about what they're about to read. So normally a hook, or how we start our introduction, is really important. So this class works on strategies, what we call invention strategies, to help students get started and use what they call effective hooks. Okay.
After you've engaged the reader with a good opening sentence, you want to give some background information. Now that just means any information that's essential for the reader to have in order to understand your main idea or to understand the topic. So this could be context, like where and when. It could be a brief history of the topic, or it could be an explanation of why the topic is controversial to begin with, or why.
Sorry, you guys. I promise I'm not going to pause on everything he says. But on background, this is what I really want you guys to pay attention to in our reading. So as you get a little bit more familiar with it in your reading, I think it'll be easier for us to mirror it or mimic it in our own writing. The intro as a vehicle for setting our reader up for the information that they're about to encounter. With the Maria Popova text, Fixed versus Growth Mindset, before she just started talking about these mindsets, she first introduced us to where these mindsets came from. You guys remember she talked about Carol Dweck's research and study. And that was important information for the reader to know in order to understand what was going on in the text. All of the research that Maria Popova was discussing in that text, Fixed versus Growth Mindset, was Carol Dweck's research. So before she just started throwing the name Carol Dweck around, she introduced her to the audience. We learned in that first paragraph or 2 whose research and information she was relying on, who Carol Dweck is, and why her finding or definition of growth versus fixed mindset is important. So before we even learned about fixed versus growth mindset, we were given background information to help us, better understand the information. Okay.
Why it's important. Okay, now once you've given the background information, it's time to give your thesis, which is the single most important sentence of your entire essay. It is always the last sentence of the introductory paragraph, and it is the main idea of your entire essay. After you've presented your thesis, you can then move on and write your body. Now the body.
All right. Couple things about thesis. I haven't yet dove into thesis yet in this class. But did you guys pinpoint or notice where he said the single most important sentence in your essay? Did we pick up on that?
Yes.
Did we make some note of it? Did we jot that down?
Yes. Yes.
Your
Yes.
thesis is the single most important sentence in your essay. So I know we spend a lot of time when we write an essay, we spend a lot of time thinking about, what am I going to say? Like, what is this going to be about? The time should really be spent in developing your thesis. And then once you know what your thesis is, then everything else is just working to support, develop, explain, or prove that point. So again, you guys know we've talked about conversation. Let's say you're talking to someone and they're giving you a lot of information. They're throwing a lot of information. Even as listeners, we still seek out, what is the point? What is the main point of all of this information? So as natural, investigators of, what is the point? What is this author trying to tell me? What should I be walking away with? As writers, we want to make sure that we are clearly conveying to our audience why we're taking the time to sit down and write these 5+ paragraphs and what we are attempting to show, explain, prove, or inform them about. So again, thesis, single most important sentence. They also said it is the last sentence in the intro paragraph. I just made a note of that. We'll talk about that. And they pointed out that it conveys the author's main idea. All right, good.
Body paragraph or paragraphs is meant to support the thesis with development, such as arguments, details, examples, description, narration, depending on the kind of essay you're writing. Now, a longer essay may include expert opinion, quotations, secondary sources, that kind of thing. But obviously, if you're writing an essay for a test or you're writing a short 250 to 300 word essay in class, you probably won't need to include secondary sources. After you've written a strong body, it's time to write your concluding paragraph. In the conclusion, you should summarize your main points and restate the thesis. It's important to think of the reader as a person with a very short memory. So at the end of your essay, you want to remind them what is your main idea. And then at the end, you also want to end your essay with as strong a statement as you started. So you want to make sure that the final comment or statement of your concluding paragraph is emphatic or interesting in some way. And that's the basic structure of an essay. If you want more practice with essay structure, follow the link at the end of this video.
All right. So short, again, sweet. I maybe made it a little bit longer than it had to be, but as we're kind of moving into week 3, we know week 4, we get the topics for our first essay assignment, but also as we have a longer text today. So what we're reading today is Malcolm X, Learning to Read. So it's on the course syllabus. I hadn't yet dropped it in the module, but I will share it with you guys. But since it is somewhat of a longer text, I want us to read it using what we've learned about essay structure, right? This whole idea that the intro or opening of the text is designed to lay out any background information, to perhaps give you purpose or some type of context, as to what the topic is, how the author plans to discuss or cover it in the text before introducing their thesis. You guys saw in the video how thesis came up again and again and again. And when I say thesis, I want you guys to keep in mind that is synonymous with author's main idea. Thesis and main idea are one and the same. So where you guys read, and I'll ask you, highlight the author's main idea. Can you identify the author's thesis or main idea? That is similar to what you guys will be doing with your own writing. This awareness that everything you've read and everything you will write will revolve around. It's all about that point. So as you read, as readers, if we read investigatively to know what is the author's main point, right? How does these details and examples support and develop that main point? It prepares us for our own opportunity to, write our essay, articulate our main idea, and then use our body paragraphs to support and develop that. If you guys saw in the video, intro presents thesis, body paragraph supports and develop thesis, and conclusion reiterates or summarize thesis. But it all is about the thesis, okay? So we'll get a tad bit more practice with that, but before we jump into anything else, let's look at this text. So while I know that normally I give you guys readings that you read on your own, this particular one, I want us to read it while we're together. And let me ask this, does anybody have their actual textbook? Not necessary, but does anyone have their text?
Yes.
If so, I'm just going to show you where you can find it in the text if you prefer to read it in the book. Okay. So in the book, what we're about to read in our last 45 minutes or so together, but actually this reading is relatively short, so I'm going to put us on a timer of about 20 minutes and see kind of where we are after that. But the text is under Unit 1, Education and Motivation, Learning to Read, page 12. So let me drop this in chat for those of you who have the text and plan to read your text, okay? So page 12 is our reading for today. Okay, and for those of you who need the digital text, I have that for you here. So I'm going to drop the link for this PDF in the chat. Okay, so again, 2 sources. You guys, if you have my text, I think Jaquan and Sam are maybe the only 2, maybe Giselle as well, who have the text. And for the rest of us, we're reading that PDF. Now, we're doing everything the same. If you have the actual text, annotate using the reading process we've discussed. If you are looking at the PDF, get you your notebook, your English 96 notebook, and label it as Learning to Read Notes and jot down your annotation notes manually, okay? But let's take a few moments. Do we all have it? Whether we're looking at it in the text or the PDF, do we all have the Malcolm X Learning to Read text available?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody who's at no? Hold on, I gotta check. Okay, we may be yes. This is good. All right, go ahead, get started reading. Investigate it. Read it as though you are looking for that background or basic information at the beginning. See if you can identify the author's main idea. We can talk a little bit more about that afterwards. Look for any unfamiliar or unknown vocabulary that can help us with full comprehension. And of course, jot down your engagement in the text. Anything that you connect to, you relate to, any questions, use your margins to get that information out, okay? You guys will be asked to summarize this assignment. I wanted us to do it in class, but we may not have time today. But definitely read, jot down your notes, because you guys will be asked to summarize this text, okay? So I'm gonna go on mute for a moment, but I am here if you have any questions to kind of give us a little bit of time to get this reading done.
Okay, wait. Okay, so are we doing the discussion and writing or just reading?
Just the reading. We're gonna all,
Okay.
strictly reading and annotation. Okay, so that's what we're doing now. Don't worry about those end of discussion questions or anything like that just yet. All right, good question. All right, you guys, I'll be here. I'm just on mute. here. And just to kind of pop in for a second, you guys, don't forget to do your previewing, looking at the title, looking at first paragraph, last paragraph. See how that can kind of help you gather some understanding before you dive into the text. If you are still reading, that's fine. It's 20 minutes since we started. But if you guys will just take another 5 minutes, no matter where you are in the reading, if you take just another 5 minutes, we'll stop there. Just for a brief readout, just for me to kind of check in on annotations. And we can pick the summary back up for Thursday's class meeting. But take another 5 minutes, you guys, and we're going to do a check-in at 11:45, 11:46. All right, you guys. I know that you may still be reading. I know I may have caught you guys right in mid flow. I see you, Jamia, where you said about 10 more minutes. But with the amount of time left, I'm just going to ask you guys, whoever you're reading right now, just to pause. We can have, the rest of the evening as well as the time before tomorrow's class to get the reading done. But I did want to check in really quickly. Just to see how we're doing with this text. I know we just kind of learned a little bit about structure and format and these whole ideas of how each part works in helping us to get a clear understanding of a text. And I wanted to see how you're reading, even if you're early reading. So if perhaps we can only talk about, let's say, the first 2 or 3 or 4 pages. I am interested to see what you guys think so far or what you thought, and also to see a couple of your annotations, your notes. So I had a couple of messages that come in while you guys were reading, and students were asking, how should I turn in annotations? A lot of times with annotations, they're for you, but I will ask you about your annotation. So a lot of times I'll just ask questions about how you annotated the text and use that information, as class participation or engagement. So that's what I wanted to really do first. So let's consider with these last 13 minutes of class that you guys, in reading this, you adhere to the process that we've talked about these first 2 weeks of previewing the text. And after you've done that, you kind of take it paragraph by paragraph, kind of jotting down notes of what you identify as the author's main idea, key points, as well as unfamiliar vocabulary or any other information in the text that you find meaningful or interesting. So that's kind of what I want to get in your business about today before we leave. But did anybody read this like little brief blurb? If you didn't have the actual print text, for those of you reading the digital text that I dropped in chat, did anybody read this little blurb, background information here in italics prior to jumping into the text? Anybody read the little blurb here? Hold on, let me give myself.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
I was fit, so I ain't read it though.
Okay, yeah, because if anybody do like I normally do, when I drop this PDF in chat, did you kind of go and assess it to see how long it was?
Yes.
No shame there. I do it
Yeah.
all the
I
time.
did that. I ain't gonna lie. I did that.
Yeah.
That's okay, you guys. There is no shame there. Sometimes I need to know how long am I about to be committed, so I need to know to kind of give myself that mental preparation, right? So that's perfectly okay if you guys kind of took a peek and saw it's about 7 pages. Maybe we thought this is too much, but definitely what you want to do, if ever you see a blurb, this is really good information in terms of giving you context. So where we normally in previewing will read the title, we'll take a look at, let's say, the first couple of paragraphs, and then and I'm just going to scroll really quickly, you guys. I know I hate fast scrolling myself, but let's say we make it to the end of the text. What did we do here? So did we kind of go through the first paragraph preview, last paragraph preview, title preview? Did we do any previewing, you guys?
No, the only preview I did was see how long it was, and then I just started reading.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you for your honesty, Rabia. That is going to be where the most discipline will take place with us, you guys, in this class, is that in kind of, spending the time with the active reading habits early on. It is so that each time we encounter a reading assignment, we exercise these habits. So I know on our own, we don't normally do these things, but for the sake of the class, we definitely, every time, even if it's a really long or really short text. We want to pause before you dive into it, and make some attempt to gather some idea of what this text is going to teach me, show me, or what I should expect to get out of it. So especially in a case where a lot of times you guys will be asked to summarize it or to pinpoint the main ideas, this kind of previewing allows you to go into it looking for that main idea. It makes it a little bit more obvious when you are actively looking for it. So the title, Learning to Read. From that title, what can you guys predict the text will talk about?
I'm learning to read.
I'm learning to read. Sometimes it's just that basic, Brandon, right? We
Yes.
know we're going to talk about the author's process of learning to read, right? So I jotted down a note here, process. So I know I'm going to look at some type of process here. He's
Right.
talking about, or I'm going to learn more about his process of, or what he does to learn to read. Okay. So that gives me some insight prior to just diving into the text. Okay. So I know what I'm going to get from this, right? The little bit of blurb here, it's talking about the author, Malcolm X, upon who the institution is named after. But it's also important to kind of know what we know about Malcolm X, because when we think about what we know about the author, we can also then know what to look for, or what we can value, right, from that text. So depending on what we know about Malcolm X individually, then we kind of know some idea of what to expect from his writing. So if you guys got any further than, what can I say, about the 5th page, where he starts really diving into books that he was interested in, that motivated him to read more because he was interested in the content or the topic. When he got to talking about the titles of books, the authors, subject matter that he was interested in, it became very personalized, in that, yep, I can see Malcolm X wanting to learn more about that. I can see him being interested in that. So again, made for more of a connection with the text. Let's say we're reading first paragraph and last paragraph. Let me do that. It was because of my letters that I happened to stumble upon starting to acquire some kind of a homemade education. If you read that, what would you think this text is going to talk about? I know you guys have already read it a tad bit, but now that we, in retrospect, look at that first paragraph, right? Does it give us any foreshadowing of what this text is going to talk about?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. In your annotations, did anybody highlight, circle, star, or underline this opening paragraph?
Yes.
Aisha, when we annotate, we normally always ask the question, what's the author's main idea? Did you guys struggle to find the author's main idea in this text? And I know some of you may have finished.
No.
Oh, I heard
Yes.
no. Okay,
I was
good.
just say, no, I was just I was just really thinking about him becoming more of a stronger reader, and took it from that perspective.
Right, good. So definitely, yes. Note too that the thesis or main idea will normally convey what the text will be about. Okay. So a lot of times when you guys are looking for a main idea, the main idea normally articulates what the text will be about, what the reader can expect to get from the text. So if I had to pinpoint and identify a thesis in this, if we blew past this first sentence, we may have missed the author's thesis statement. Did anybody identify this first statement as the main point? Now, maybe you knew
Yes.
what the main point is. Okay, Brandon, I see that. Maybe you guys may have you know, based on your reading and your understanding, what you're able to grab. Maybe you know what they called implied thesis. Maybe you know what the main point is, but there's also what they call an explicit thesis statement, where you can point to a spot in the text where it explicitly communicates or conveys the author main point. I would call this an explicit statement, in terms of it clearly identifies the author's main idea, which is they're going to talk about homemade education through talking about the process of learning to read. But also they're laying out here why they stumbled upon this journey of learning to read or homemade education. Okay, so learning to read and homemade education for Malcolm X is somewhat one in the same, in that he's detailing a story of when he took his education into his own hands. Okay, so do you guys, you know, somewhat agree with that, that is what this text is talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, everything that he lays out almost in perfect format is he sets us up, first of all, in what this text is going to talk about. He treats the first few paragraphs as though they are background information and intro. So he gives us background. So before we go into his process of learning to read, or how he kind of acquired this level of homemade education, because he was not traditionally educated. He wasn't trained in a university. And I'm doing air quotes because, to me, considering these were books that came from a university, right? We learned that the books were
Yeah.
donated to the prison from a university in Pennsylvania, I believe it was. I'm going to say he pretty much has a university level education, even though Malcolm X, he was a little bit humble about that. Okay, so really quickly, we talk about his process. What is the first step in his process in learning to read? What did we pick up as the first step? What did he do first?
Copy the dictionary.
I heard copy the dictionary. In terms of outlining the process, would we all agree that what he did in his first step to learn to read, or again, acquire this type of education, do we all agree that he read, copy the dictionary? I see a couple things.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Okay, good. So I went through, because I identified from the title that this is a process. He's going to talk about his process in learning to read. I jotted in my annotations process. Then I went into my paragraphs and I would label it 1. Then I label it 2, 3. So I'm walking through, here is his process in learning to read, or again, acquiring this homemade education. So before he actually did anything, though, I want to say, but I'm not going to say you guys have the wrong answer. It's definitely right. First step in reading was him going to the dictionary. He wanted to have meaning, comprehension. He didn't want to just read. And let me tell you what I highlighted, my last minute. I highlighted when he said, when I just skipped those words, of course, I really ended up with little idea of what the book said. He is aware that his problem in reading is that he didn't understand what he was reading. Comprehension. And
right.
What's unique about this is that this is the student who is aware of where his learning, or how his learning may be stunted. So what's unique about Malcolm X is he's not waiting on a teacher. He's not waiting on anyone to tell him perhaps how he should go about it. He's cognizant of what he does when he reads. He said, a lot of times I skip over words I don't understand. He knows that even though I'm reading, I'm not understanding it. I'm not picking it up. I'm just kind of going through the motions. So in him knowing himself, remember we talked about metacognition?
Yes.
We're looking at a clear example of metacognition. This is a young man who is aware that he has some limitations in his learning. And he's aware or cognizant enough to pinpoint what those limitations are. So when he was coming up with a process in learning to read, because he was motivated to learn to read, because he now wants to converse with his spiritual advisor, you know, Elijah Muhammad. So he has a motivation, just like some of you have a motivation to earn a degree. You may have a motivation to enter a particular career field. It is that motivation that sparked him on his learning journey, right? That helped led to him embarking on this journey. So even though that's not a step in the process, that is a major contributing factor. He was motivated to do this because he, you know, of his need to communicate. But I know I'm about 2 minutes over, but not only communicate, you guys, he halfway wants to impress, you know, Elijah Muhammad. So who he's writing letters for. Now, let me take us back to this thesis. It was because of my letters that I happened to stumble upon starting to acquire some kind of homemade education. While the process is important, what is really the main idea or the point of the process is that he was motivated because of these letters, right? So, okay, we'll talk a lot more about this when you guys come back on Thursday. We will have time in class to kind of review what we talked about in summary, but prepare on Thursday to write a summary about this text in class. And just to give you a heads up, I've read just about every summary online, so try your best to use your annotations on your notes, your comprehension, to help you draw that summary, right? To help you construct that summary. So we're going to talk more about it on Thursday, you guys. If you didn't get a chance to finish reading, dive into that a bit further. I'm going to ask you guys about your vocabulary words you identified, as well as what were some quotes in the text that you found meaningful or interesting. So we'll pick back up on Thursday, you guys. Did you have any questions for me before we dismiss?
Like the story, I know that.
I'm sorry, say it one more time, Brandon.
And I said I'm gonna like this topic we reading on.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
This one
Yeah, I like
it.
this one a lot. All right, good. So we'll talk about it. So that means you guys will have a whole lot to share with me on Thursday. So we'll pick up the discussion then. I see you, Caesar. So hold on before you leave. So hold on just before you leave. Other than that, anybody else, if you don't have any questions, I'll go ahead and dismiss. I'll see you guys on Thursday. And I will be uploading week 3 module this evening. So you guys will get a chance to take a look at that.
Bye.
All right, have a good one. Bye, Emmeline. See you guys. All right, Caesar, I know everybody's slipping out. You missed on Thursday. And you said you did look at that video already, right, Caesar? You did. Okay. From Thursday, the only thing we discussed in full was that Maria Popova text, fixed versus growth mindset. So start there. Start with your readings, your annotations. Really make sure you have a clear understanding of that text, because all we did on Thursday, it all surrounded that text. We had a single sentence summary, so asking students to summarize their author's main point. We had in-class questions based on the reading. So it's just all about your understanding of the text, fixed versus growth mindset. And that is in week 2 module. So other than that, okay, good. So if from there you have any questions, then send it to me via email, Caesar, and I'll do my best to help you out. All right, cool. Have a good one. All right, and I got a few people. Jacob, Jaquan, Mylan.